Hello and welcome back to Tuesday at Dobbs's. From the second and final, genuinely sad to say that, final video from here in Goa. Thank you as always everyone for getting in touch. The best place to do so, comment section below, and if you've got a longer story, maybe some pictures, you can email hi@tuesdayatdobbs.com. I'm going to start this week with a continuation of the topic I brought up last week. If you can just hold on to your vehicle, whether it's a car or motorbike, for long enough, does that automatically guarantee that vehicle is going to constantly increase in value? I gave a few examples where that is not the case. For example, the Defender and the Series 2 Land Rover, whereby the Defender is actually more valuable than the older Series 2 Land Rover. Patches has an insight on this. Freddie, the values of vehicles lies in the scarcity, just like coins. The age does not make it valuable, but the amounts produced that year or how many of a model were produced over the production period of a certain model. I've done some research on this. I've picked, top of my head, the special edition motorcycles that come to mind without having to do too much in-depth thinking. Here are the first ones that come to mind over recent-ish years. The first one is the Ducati Diavol Lamborghini limited edition. I'll put a picture up here. This was a very, very special limited run. Made in 2021, so 3 years ago. Just 630 of these vehicles were available worldwide. All of them were numbered. The starting price was £27,795. Bear in mind the standard model was £20,000. So this is a £7,000 premium to get this Lamborghini special edition. And don't think you get loads of extra performance with that. You get a lot in terms of the looks point of view, the paint, a few other bits and pieces, but for outright performance, you don't get huge increases. So, if in 2021 you could have bought one of the numbered special editions for £27,000, what do you think it's worth now? Well, it was difficult me finding some of these for sale. Clearly collectors like to hold on to them, but I found this. 2023, one was sold at auction in the USA, and it did sell, by the way, it did sell. So this is confirmed what it sold for, including the buyer's fee from the auction, £64,000. £64,000. That is doubling your money within 2 years. And don't think that's a freak, because I found one from a Stoke UK dealership that was for sale for £60,000, and that sold too. So if you can get the right kind of vehicle, you can make colossal amounts of money. The difficulty is actually finding the right vehicle. I'll do a few more here. This is a bike I saw in the Vilnius, Lithuania dealership. Royal Enfield Continental GT 650, 120-year anniversary. This was a limited production run of 480 motorbikes in total, split between Continentals and Interceptors. 120 went to Europe, 120 to the Americas, 120 to Southeast Asia, and the other 120 to India. This wasn't expensive, and I actually remember when these came out, so it's almost painful for me. These were £8,300 when they came out, and this was a genuine first come, first serve. There was no special treatment if you're an avid Royal Enfield collector. First come, first serve, for a perfectly reasonable price of £8,300. That is not a lot of money. This is a beautiful bike, really nice, personalised touches straight from the Indian manufacturer on the east coast of India. I think they had this little beautiful brass plaque that had been made by artisans, a lot of lovely touches. It looked bang on worth the money when I saw it. But if it was £8,300 back in, I think it would be 2021 when it came out, what do you think it's worth now? The only one the only one I could find for sale, again, people clearly hold on to these, was in the USA, and I found one for sale for $19,000. $19,000. This was September the 13th, 2023. Right here on classic.com. Beautiful looking Continental, done almost no miles at all. Again, going for not a million miles off. Double the original price in the space of 2 years, doubled its value. I'll do two more quickly. Ducati Paul Smart limited edition. Paul Smart, of course, the British racer who won the, I believe, top of my head, Imola 200 in 1972, or Imola 2000, I always forget. Very famous racer for Ducati. Ducati brought out in 2006, limited edition Paul Smart 1000. Only 2,000 models were made. I think it was about £11,000 when new, or thereabout. Do you want to know what it's worth now? Depending on which one you go for with the mileage, 20 to 26,000 euros. I think these have almost doubled in price over the past 4 or 5 years. They have just skyrocketed astronomically. I'll do one more. Another bike I went to see, Triumph Speed Twin 1200 Breitling limited edition. This is where I went in the helicopter over to Triumph Hinckley to see the big launch. Again, a lovely looking bike. No real performance enhancements, but it had a nice paint scheme and it was a limited run with a matching Breitling watch that you would have to buy separately. In 2022, it was £16,000 for a brand new one. Standard one was £11,000. Wonder what it's worth now? One sold last year, September 2023, £13,250. So that's lost value in the space of a year. It just shows how difficult it is to really gauge which bikes are going to be the special limited edition ones. I remember back in 2020 or 2013, there was a Triumph Bonneville Steve McQueen limited edition, and I thought they would skyrocket. But you can still pick those up for £8,500 for one of these limited run, 1,100 ever made, Steve McQueen Triumph Bonnevilles, and they didn't really explode. So trying to gauge it, value-wise, what's going to be worth money, incredibly difficult. I'll move on now to Ben in Portsmouth. A dilemma as to what bike to pick next. Freddie, when I passed my test, I bought, and I'll put some pictures up, a couple of nice pics here. When I passed my test, I bought my Suzuki GSR 750Z. I toured Scotland on it and had a great time. I then decided that the classic 350 Royal Enfield would be my next bike and had a great summer riding it. The problem was that as I commute on bikes to work along the M27, the experience of sitting in the slow lane, getting overtaken by lorries, was not very pleasant. I sadly decided that although I love the bike, it just wasn't the all-rounder that I needed. I sold it privately and bought a Honda VFR 800X Crossrunner. It's a 2011 model that I bought on eBay for well below the market value. The bike has been faultless. Of course it's been faultless. It's a Honda. And I've toured Wales on it and will soon be taking it to the Isle of Man. That's a dream of mine. The Isle of Man with a group of riders that I tour with every year. I've now had this bike for nearly a year, and although it does everything I need it to do, great power, comfy, etc., what's missing is that little bit, that feeling of bike excitement. It just doesn't fill me with joy. I'm looking at a few bikes for my next potential bike. Maybe a Moto Guzzi V7, maybe a Triumph Bonneville T100, and possibly even an Interceptor. I have heard that Royal Enfield are in the works for a classic 650. See, I've heard this as well, but I've been hearing this, I'm sure, for about a year. I don't really know when it's coming, but I think it is going to arrive. I continue. I've heard Royal Enfield are in the works for Classic 650, which has been spied in India undergoing tests. The question, should I wait for the Classic 650 or do I try another brand? All the best, Ben, Portsmouth. Ben, if it were me, the best advice I could give you is don't wait. The reason I say that, every biking season, I've been riding for about 13 years now, every biking season is precious and valuable. Don't wait one biking season for a bike that you're still not sure about. You don't know when it's going to come, you don't know if you're going to like it. Every single year that we're lucky enough to be biking is too precious to have it as a waiting year to find out what's going to happen next year. Just focus on every single biking year being the best biking year. So I would say forget about the Classic 650 until it arrives. Go for the Moto Guzzi or the Triumph. If you pick one of the later Moto Guzzis from 2021 with that 850cc engine, this compared to the Triumph T100, they are so incredibly evenly matched. It really does just come down to personal preference. Ease of use with the Moto Guzzi with the shaft drive, so you don't have all the chain maintenance, and the characterful engine of the Moto Guzzi, or the slightly purer design and the heritage element with the Triumph Bonneville T100. For me personally, and it's just personal preference, I'd pick the Triumph because I like the looks of it more than the Moto Guzzi, but that's no more than personal preference. Ben, let me know what you go for, but if you have a look at this, in fact, let me just jump in here. If you're having a look at the Moto Guzzi V7, you can pick a 2022 model up for £6,400. That's quite a lot of bike for the money. They've come down a nice chunk there, so 2 years and you're saving yourself around £3,000 with that 850cc engine. And if you look at the Triumph, we can pick up, again, a 3-year-old Triumph for £7,150. So in the used market, the Moto Guzzi is coming in about £600 to £700 cheaper. But for me, there's just something about the Bonnevilles I love. But definitely, Ben, go for one of those two. Also over the Interceptor, I find these two bikes from Triumph and Triumph and Moto Guzzi slightly more comfortable, and that extra power just means that it's more flexible to do big tours, to ride to up, things like that. So I would say Bonneville, then Moto Guzzi. Moving on to Sarden in Serbia. Apologies for the beeping on my phone. I'll just turn that on silent. Sarden, apologies for the pronunciation. I think I've got that right-ish. I begin. Freddie, my name is Sarden. Pronounced something like surgeon. I'm from Serbia and I'm 53 years old and I have an unfulfilled love of motorcycles for various reasons in life. I'd love to hear your advice on choosing a motorcycle. My budget's around €5,000 for the purchase of a bike. The Royal Enfield Meteor 350 caught my eye due to features and personal affinities. The question is, should I buy a new Meteor 350 or an old, used 2007 Triumph America 900? I'm currently in that dilemma. Or, if you have any advice, that would be appreciated. Sarden, for me, this was surprisingly easy. You've almost answered the question for me. First of all, though, you're going to be absolutely fine with the power and the dimensions from the America over the little Meteor 350. So don't worry about any of that. You've said here you're a fit, healthy 53-year-old man, so there'll be no issues at all. So you can pick either of these and you will almost instantaneously feel right at home. Especially being a gentleman with more experience in the world, you're not going to be going out on the America and trying to hit 100 miles an hour immediately. So any feeling of the bigger engine bike being slightly too daunting, that goes out the window. You don't need to worry about any of that at all. The thing that I think will be the deciding factor is where you said an unfulfilled love of motorcycles, as opposed to a daily commuter. This is why I think the America is the right bike for you, because this is a bike that will both ignite and confirm your love of motorcycles. It will take the Royal Enfield Meteor and it will times it by 2 or 3, that extra level of feeling special, wanting to walk away from the bike and then look back as a really special object of desire. That America will give you everything that you dreamt a motorbike would be. And living in such a beautiful part of the world, you've got Serbia, Montenegro, all of those beautiful bits of scenery on your doorstep. The Triumph America means that you can explore everywhere and not think about selling the bike in 6 to 12 months' time when you're completely comfortable with the little Meteor. This is a bike in the America that you can keep as a lifelong bike. It will do everything you need it to do, and it will give you that level of feeling, that level of passion that a bike can give, that you think it will give. And I promise you, you will not be disappointed. These are excellent bikes, these old Triumphs with beautiful engines. Same as my Bonneville. Forget about the issues I've had with the Bonneville. They are really good, strong, well-built bikes. Sarden, let me know what you go for. I say Triumph America is the bike for you. And I'll give you this actually. This came in nicely. This is from Stephen in County Down, Northern Ireland. One more, Sarden, possible piece of helping insight from a man who's been biking for about 47 years and has owned 100 bikes. From Stephen, County Down, Northern Ireland. Freddie, I'm 59 years old, have been riding since the age of 12. And ever since then, I've always had at least one bike. I've had over 100. For me personally, I want a bike that speaks to me, that I walk up to the shed just to look at it. I want a bike that gives that fizz that James May described in Top Gear. I've done the bigger, better, more powerful, faster, blah, blah, blah. But put simply, if it looks good and feels right, that is your bike. So Sarden, going back to you. Stephen, thank you. What's the bike that you're most excited about? That should be the only thing you're considering. What's the bike, if you put the Meteor and the America side by side, you get the most excited about just to look at it and just the feeling of heading off on a ride? Which one would you want to ride the most, just from a looks point of view? Because keep the decision making as simple as that, and I truly think you'll make the right choice. This is me following on, and I'm so sorry I've forgotten your name, from the gentleman in Puerto Rico last week or 2 weeks ago. He had a Huskvarna Svartpilen 401. And it really got me thinking about Huskvarna. I knew they made a bigger engined Svartpilen, the Huskvarna Svartpilen 701. It's a middleweight bike that's actually a lightweight. This is a 74 horsepower bike that weighs 158 kilos, and it's a 700cc bike. And on top of all that, it does 70 miles per gallon. So it's insanely economical, it's ridiculously light, it's going to have exquisite handling. And at 74 horsepower, it's got more than enough horsepower for every situation. And when you couple it with that lightweight, it must be one of the most fun bikes to ride. This is a bike that came out in 2019. It sounds like a recipe for a sales hit. So I started having a look at it. I went on to Huskvarna's website, and it's not there. The 701 Svartpilen isn't there, so I did a bit more digging and a bit more research online. It looks like they discontinued this bike 3 years ago in 2021. So the 701 Svartpilen had a production run of 2 to 3 years. It must have been a complete sales flop. So it's an insanely rare bike. But I want to hear from any of you. What is it about this bike? What happened to it? Is it not a good bike to own? Was it not a good bike to ride? Why did it only get sold for 2 to 3 years. And what can you get now with one of these extremely agile looking bikes? I found one here. Let me just have a look here. Auto Trader, 3 adverts. 3 adverts. I'm at a loss here to understand why these didn't sell. Have a listen to this. 2020 model, Svartpilen 701. It just looks brilliant. It's £6,295. I mean, if you are looking at a really dynamic feeling bike and you want something a little niche, a little left field, something that no one else is going to have, then go and check out one of these. £6,000 for one of these Swedish middleweight bikes. That's got to be a keeper, getting this kind of bike. Just going on how many available Auto Trader, 3 of them. Something very special with a bike like that that's been produced for so few years and so few sold. I'd love to hear from owners. Let me know on that. On now to Bike of the Week, all the way over in Australia. If you thought the Huskvarna Svartpilen 701 was just too commonplace, there are too many of them around, and you want something even nicher, have a listen to this. This is from Paul. Freddie, I've owned almost every modern brand, and you're completely right about passion. Yes, the Japanese bikes have a lot of reliability, but I owned, okay, get a pen and paper here because this is niche. I owned the older Italian-made 2014 Benelli 1130 Tre-K. That's TRE-K. Yes, it wasn't the most reliable, but it sounded like an F1 Ferrari with its triple engine and was probably the best, block capital best, handling bike I've ever owned. It always put the Japanese bikes to shame in the twisties. Paul from Australia. Right, Paul, let's have a look at this. Benelli 1130 Tre-K, made between 2006 and 2017, built in Pesaro, Italy. It's an adventure sports bike, that's what it's classed as. It's got 123 horsepower, and owners rate its reliability on MCN just as Paul does, i.e. fairly iffy. So what do we have? We have a bike with iffy reliability that was ceased production in 2017, so that's 7 years ago. And we also, importantly, have a company that moved their production from Italy over to China. And I've heard from many people with these old Benellis who say that they've been to a new Benelli dealership since the switch over from Italian production to Chinese production, gone into one of the showrooms or one of the dealerships, asked for a part for their Italian-built bike, and the dealerships say, look, we're really sorry, but we only make parts now for the Chinese-built bike. So you're really on your own. You're going to have to see if you can find your own parts for your Italian-built Benelli. So we've got big problems potentially with getting parts, and on top of that, we have reliability issues. Are you tempted? Anyone? Maybe there's one person watching who's nodding at the screen thinking, oh, yes, this is the bike I've been looking for. Well, if this is you, and you have equal parts, bravery, and maybe lunacy, continue listening. In fact, just before I tell you what there is in the classifieds, which is, I'll save you the trouble of looking a little bit, almost nothing. There is almost nothing available if you're looking at one of these Tre-Ks. So little about this bike online that even if you go onto Wikipedia, there is literally one sentence on this bike on Wikipedia, just one sentence. But I have managed to find one, although it's incredibly difficult. I couldn't find any on Auto Trader, and I could only find one available on eBay. Just one bike. And it's such a niche bike, the person selling it had to actually write what the bike is and copy and paste an excerpt from MCN explaining what it is, with MCN saying, actually, it's quite a good bike. So here it is, 2011 Benelli Tre-K 1130, yours for £3,795. Look, you've got to be off the scale brave to buy one of these. But if you do, you're going to be in ownership of, as Paul says, one of the sweetest handling Italian-made bikes that you may ever have experienced. Has anyone ever owned one of these? I would love to hear. Are there any owners here watching, past or present, Benelli Trekkie? What are they really like? And I'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching this week's episode. Have a brilliant week all, and I'll speak to you all in the next one.